Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Recovery Corner. I'm your host, Candace Rose. On today's episode, I have invited a couple of all-star YPR chapter leads to talk about their experiences with recovery as people of color and the unique challenges and barriers that impact their communities with regard to substance use disorder and recovery. So thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show, Dnechelle and Chris.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you're here. Really excited to dive into this topic. It's definitely something I'm really motivated to learn more about because I only know what my experience has been like. So I think it's important that we're like telling the story from all the different walks of life and making sure that like recovery is like celebrated by everybody and accessible to everybody. So first I kind of want to start out, let you guys just introduce yourselves. So as Chris would say, ladies first. Dnechelle, if you want to tell us who you are, where you're from, and maybe what your connection to recovery is.
Absolutely. I am Dnechelle Pascol, and I am an ally in recovery. I am currently the Defiance, Ohio chapter lead for young people in recovery.
I guess that's my turn. My name is Chris. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. A YPR worker in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm a young person in recovery.
Lovely. Well, cool. So we got some representation from different areas of the country. So I think that's great. As we dig into this, Dnechelle, you are an ally of recovery. And I know that you've definitely been impacted by substance use disorder in like an exterior mode. Would you be comfortable sharing a little bit about kind of what that's been like?
Absolutely. And I would say being a part of young people in recovery has made me more comfortable with sharing, what I've experienced as someone who is related to, individuals with substance use disorders. My mother and my father both struggled with substance use disorder. And as my siblings grew older, they also struggled with the same thing. So I grew up around it. Either you were using some type of substance or you were dealing the substance. And you are inadvertently affected by those things, because where I'm from, there wasn't a lot of aid for substance use disorders. It was more so punishment. Mm-hmm. And instead of, my mother or my father, any of them getting any kind of help to heal or recover, they were punished for it. So it continued, like, you get what I'm saying? And so I grew up, as I got older, I used to fight a lot. I used to get into tons of fights at school, wherever I was at. So my behavior became an issue because I was acting out a lot, because at home, things were going on that I couldn't understand. And it showed in that way. It affected me in that way. And so I always look at the situation that I come from as like, wow, young people in recovery has shown me that there are so many resources for individuals who are struggling with substance use disorders, and for even the families of those who struggle with substance use disorders. But that was never presented to anyone in my community. That wasn't presented to anybody to the people that were raising me. You know what I'm saying? Mm. I'm from the hood, and every corner of the hood has a liquor store. Like, and instead of treatment options or treatment centers or anything like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, just like the landscape of your community differs. And like, yeah, what I feel like, so often, yeah, we're products of our environment. So, are there, yeah, yoga studios or nice restaurants in your neighborhood, versus, yeah, like liquor stores and,
the liquor store on one corner and the church on another.
Goodness. Yeah. Well, and it sounds like too, like your experience or what your family's experience was, struggling with substance use disorder was punished. Like it wasn't viewed as this public health issue within your community, and more just like a moral failing, which, I think recovery's come a long way, and more people are, starting to shift their perspective towards like recognizing this as like a disease. But that's not true across all populations. Like it's still an uphill battle in like minority populations. I live in Durango, Colorado. It's, we're a Colorado mountain town, predominantly white community. But like I see, like we have jail-based health services here in Durango. We have jail transitions teams. So not only helping people get the support they need when they're incarcerated for issues stemming from, they might get incarcerated for an event that was related to their substance use. They can get services in jail. And then there's also a transitions team that helps them like readjust back into the community and support them in ongoing recovery. But I know that that's like rare, like that's the exception and not the rule. And again, our community is different than Ohio, communities in Ohio, communities in like Baltimore.
I'm from Cleveland, so
yeah.
I definitely think that people who struggle with substance use disorder don't necessarily need, I feel like jail or prison is for hard criminals like murderers, other things like that. People who struggle with a substance shouldn't be punished for that. You're forcing somebody to go to jail, detox, which is unhealthy because they don't get the medicine or whatever it is they need to do that healthily. And then you just expect them to sit there and what?
The problem is when people look like you, because they look like you, they're supposed to be that way, and they'll get over it. We throw them in a cell for a few days or a few months or a few years, because that's what people like you or like me is. We're supposed to do stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's not out of character to them. That's why they never consider us to have a mental illness, to have any type of generational oppression, like I mentioned to you yesterday, Candace. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't consider that for us because we've been so criminalized, if that's the word I'm looking for. Like they only see us as criminals. They don't see us as people in pain. So we don't get considered for a mental health facility for substance use disorders. You got to get locked up because, listen, these prisons was made for people like you. The moment you mess up, it don't matter if you are having some type of, mental breakdown or mental mishap, because we all go through shit in life. But that's not what systemic oppression teaches us.
Right.
When it comes to substance use disorders. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you a crackhead from the womb. And I'm sorry to be so raw with it, but this is the type of language that people in my life use towards me, and the way that I was talked at, instead of somebody saying to me, your mother is sick, your father is sick. They say, no, you a crackhead, baby.
Yes.
Your mama crackhead. So let's talk about verbal abuse and language. We talk about language so much in young people in recovery, and I know me saying these using these terms is not what is not, you know what I'm saying, but I have to be real, and I have to give it to you the way that it was given to me as a Black girl who had parents on substance, who struggled with substance use disorders. You know what I'm saying? Who has a brother who probably had a whole mental breakdown December 31st, and he spazzed out, and now he's locked up in prison with broken ribs and things like that. But nobody's tested him for mental health. Nobody's, you know, trying to check on his spiritual health or anything like that. But if this was a different person, if this was a different community, the first thing that everybody would have said was he wasn't right mentally. Let's get him some help, not lock him up for the rest of his life, because this is what he do. This is what Black men or Black people do. So there's no help for them, because I don't want to see you healthy mentally, even though I know there's something wrong mentally, because generations of oppression has continued to be birthed in men and Black women, and nobody wants to address that. Nobody wants to address that. Maybe we should check in and see how their mental health is doing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said too, you know, when we talk about like the language and like, you know, I don't want you to feel like you have to apologize for using, you know, kind of the terms. It's like in the fashion of meeting people where they're at, you know, you want this to be heard by the right people, and that's what they're going to hear. But I also think in that same, you know, breath, it's like rising above that and helping everybody kind of like, if we want to be perceived differently, like let's use words that are going to like empower us to like speak out and kind of like get out from under those terms. But I don't know, thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's yeah, you'd shared with me recently, you know, what was going on with your brother, and I remember he had come around maybe 6 months ago. Yeah. You had some concerns at that time, and it's really unfortunate that there weren't avenues for him to be directed to, you know, to address what was going on within, you know, the scope of mental health. And it's resulted in incarceration, and those of us that work in, you know, the field of recovery and work with people with substance use disorder, like incarceration is not the solution for substance use disorder. So yeah, like I don't know the answer to this, but you know, especially for people of color, like how do we like prioritize getting that conversation elevated so that it's, you know, these like jail-based health services that I'm talking about and alternatives to incarceration, like how they exist, you know, but we need to make sure that they're equitable for all communities and available.
I feel like in the Black community, especially, we're taught to suppress our emotions. And I know for me, you know, growing up, I was raised by my mother, who I eventually lost when I was 12. You know, one thing she used to tell me all the time was, if you do bad in school, I'm gonna send you to live with your father. You know, so for me, that created a lot of mental trauma alone, to not want to even deal with who my father was. And eventually that grew a sense of resentment between me and him that has caused a volcano effect, or whatever you want to call it, to the point where me and him don't even have a relationship anymore. So for me, I truly believe that it starts at home. It starts at how you talk to your kids. It starts, you know, just communication and being as though we don't have that. You know, somebody like me who didn't have that. I started smoking weed when I was 12, when I found out that my mom was dead, and then I got diagnosed with severe depression 3 years later, you know, because I realized eventually that she was never coming back. And I started self-sabotaging my life. And throughout that whole time, my father, excuse me, stay strong, you're gonna be okay. It's don't cry, all of those things that we think aren't healthy or we're told aren't healthy is actually what would actually help us to not even have to potentially use a substance. So yeah, I just feel like it's big on communication, allowing you to talk and express yourself.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like what you're kind of like alluding to. Reminds me of like masculine talks. What is it? Toxic masculinity. Thank you. Sorry, I was like saying this backwards. But I mean, just like in our country alone, I think that's a big issue because yeah, like men are in this role, and I can only imagine, as like a Black man, just there's this pressure on you to be like strong and not have any feelings of vulnerability, but that that only like further perpetuates the problem when there's like issues happening internally that we don't address. I mean, my own experience, like even still to this day, sometimes I try to figure out I'll like experience an emotion and I don't like react the way, like sometimes I'll be like sad and I'll react angry, and that's just like something that I've developed. But I think that pressure definitely is harder for men just because of these like gender roles that have kind of come to be, and that just creates more internal struggle that kind of leads to these bigger issues.
Right.
So we heard a little bit about Dnechelle. Thank you for kind of like giving us a glimpse into how substance use has impacted your life. Chris, you introduced yourself as a person in recovery. So what's kind of been your relationship with substance use and into recovery?
Yeah. So again, my journey in recovery started 15 years ago at this point. Started. I'm 27 now. So I started growing up. I was always around substances. Again, I grew up on my mother's side of the family. Had a lot of cousins and uncles that were close in age. Part Puerto Rican, so y'all can assume how we get down. We got a big family. So I was always around smoking. I don't want to say was taught, but smoking weed was a cool thing to them, and that was kind of like an outlet that my family chose to use to not deal with the other emotional things we were going through. So I ended up living with my father after I got kicked out of elementary school, and when I was 12, like I said, I lost my mom, and it broke me. I mean, as it would anybody, I believe. And I went to school one day, just to make a long story short, went to school one day and a friend of mine at the bus stop was like, hey, you want to hit this cigarette? And lo and behold, it was a joint. And, that's pretty much how that started for me. And, a lot of people smoke to like get high, right? And I smoke to kind of ease my nerves. It's a struggle to wake up every day dealing with the mental aspect of it because, I wake up every day knowing that I'm never going to see my mother again, right? And that was truly my best friend. And her other child, my older sister, still live in California. So I don't really have a true connection to my mother's side of the family anymore, which makes my day-to-day a lot harder for me because, I try to stay strong and not have to necessarily deal with those feelings, which is probably unhealthy, but I've learned, I think, a good balance of how to deal with it. So, that's my story.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I say something to you, Chris, as a Black man? What I tell the Black men in my life who feel like staying strong means that they don't feel anything is that you have to find your own strength. Your father's strength can't be yours.
Right, right.
If you feel like being strong is you crying your eyes out, allow that to be your strength. Because I know a lot of the Black men in my family too, and I'm stopping this with my son because they're always told, be strong, don't you cry, man up, without even getting the chance of boyhood because of so much trauma.
Yeah. So that was something that I really struggled with growing up. Aside from the fact that when my mother was gone, my father was raised by his grandparents, who were military parents down south. So he's got a lot of those um, parenting strategies that are just a lot tougher. He looks at himself as a stricter person, but he he has a criminal background. He has substance use disorder, and the fact that he couldn't find a way to relate to everything that I was going through is unfortunate. But I've learned to not necessarily blame him because I was his first child. They were 20 years old when they had me, and there's no instruction manual on how to raise a child. And I don't think anybody could have saw, my mom dying, even though we just found out that she knew she was sick for years, and chose not to tell everybody, which is actually the real reason she sent me to live with my father, even though I did get kicked out of elementary school. She knew that her days were coming to an end. So yeah, I mean, I feel for my sister. I feel for my mom's mom, everybody on that side. My sister was the person who actually found my mom deceased. She passed away in her sleep. Her heart just stopped. So I take a lot of that trauma more so than just the fact of her being gone. I feel like I take pride in like solving people's problems, right? Which is something that I've learned not to do so much of because I lose sight of myself. But yeah, it's definitely been a journey, living through that. So it'll be 15 years next month. So yeah, doing this story that I'm doing for you, Candace, just a little bit more special for me, and being Black History Month. So um, I'm appreciative of all the opportunities YPR has given me, for sure.
Hell yeah. Well, Chris, like I'm so sorry for your loss. I really appreciate you just opening up about that and sharing that with us. And I'm a firm believer that like the more difficult challenges we face, like the bigger opportunities for growth we have. And even though the outcomes of these difficult things suck, like losing people that we love, if we harness that energy to the best way we can, like we can really utilize that to help other people and help ourselves moving forward. So I think I've only known you for a brief while since you started working with YPR, but I think that every experience, negative or positive, that you've had in your life has like led you to where you are now. And you don't have to fix other people's problems, but you're in a position where you can help people learn how to fix their own problems, and that's powerful.
Absolutely. So I appreciate those words. I try every day to just remain positive. She was 32 when she passed away, so I'm 5 years from that. So I try every day to live life for her, do things I know she would want to do. She was a people person, so I get that from her.
What was your mother's name?
Marisol.
Marisol. Beautiful.
So soul in Spanish is sun, so they called her soul. She was a bright.
Oh, love that.
If I drop a tear, I'm gonna let y'all know. When it comes to my mama, I'm sensitive when it comes to my mama. So if I drop a tear throughout this conversation, I apologize. But yeah, I don't really get the opportunity to talk about her as much as people may think, only because again, everybody else kind of pushes it away and tries not to think about it, which is of course unhealthy. So
That's not fair to you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't bring it up to my sister, because again, she was traumatized, right? She was 14 when she found her mother laying in the bed like that. So she never really talks about it. But yeah, I feel like in our community, there's always, unfortunately, a traumatic experience that almost forces us to want to use, to find something that's gonna suppress those feelings. And for me, once I knew that the effects that marijuana had, that really truly helped me not deal with the headaches I would wake up with, just the sad feelings I'd go through life, go through my day with, different things reminding me of her. So, smoking was just my way of dealing with it. And unfortunately, it was an unhealthy outlet, but that was my reasoning behind ending up using.
Yeah, it's not something that is like taught to us as children and adolescents, like how to manage and navigate difficult feelings. And it's so easy to just numb it when we don't know how to like sit with it and move through it. It's really unfortunate. I think it speaks a lot to our culture as a country, like what our priorities are. I would love to see like a shift in curriculum within the schools so that there's like more focus on just well-being as a human. But thank you for sharing your story and your thank you. I have some other questions I kind of want to dig into that are kind of broad, kind of big questions. I think they're important. And one thing, the first question that comes to mind is like, you both have seen how substance use has impacted, communities of color, both as an ally, a person impacted by a loved one, or somebody that's like experienced it themselves. And, what challenges have you noticed for people of color with regard to substance use disorder and entering into recovery or treatment?
I would say I've noticed that the options aren't presented as often in the Black communities when it comes to recovery or treatment. I mentioned something earlier, and I said that they already criminalize Black people. So once you go on record with a substance use disorder or anything like that, then no matter where you go, into a hospital, into a job interview, and I've seen this happen with my mother. I watched her go through these things. Once you're labeled on record, it could be for an open can of beer or getting caught with a glass pipe or something like that. Once that is on you, it's on you because it's on you already, is what I've seen. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And so the option for recovery or treatment isn't as wide in the Black communities as it is everywhere else. And I feel like it's purposefully done because instead of adding treatment centers or treatment options or getting more boys and girls clubs in the communities for the youth, we got liquor stores, we got churches, we got prison systems, we got abandoned schools. So, you know what I'm saying? And instead of treatment or recovery being an option, there's more options to become someone who struggles with substance use disorder than not. And so that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed just watching, my family deal with things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for people in our community, especially, we're also taught not to trust easily, right? So that's why I feel like building a rapport with the participants I serve today is just that much more important, because I know when I was younger and, was guided in some ways, I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to, you don't know the answers to my life. You don't, you can't relate to me, this, that, and the third, right? So I feel like just genuinely wanting to be there for somebody and showing that person that can really go a long way, because people don't trust easily these days, um, so yeah, I feel like that's probably one of the biggest challenges for people with substance use disorder: trust.
It's like trust within your own communities, or like trusting like in
Trusting that the person that wants to help you is
mm,
gonna help you for all the right reasons, and do it genuinely.
right.
And I would say that's rightfully so for many people, because there has been people come to the hood and be like, I got something for you, I can help you with that, but you're only doing more damage.
Right.
And so if there was, like you said, people came there and they built the rapport and actually brought the resources, the treatment, the recovery options, on a more consistent basis, where you see consistently people recovering
Right.
and not falling back into the same cycle because I'm 2 blocks away from the liquor store and I live right down the street from the weed man, or things like that. We're put in these spaces not to thrive, not to recover, not to get treated. And we don't have enough resources on our own to go out and build that within the communities.
Right. And then again,
so I can relate to that. I mean, agree to what you said about the trust thing.
People, I feel like there's the way the system is made. I know we often say, the prison system is made for, to fail the Black man, right? But essentially, I feel like the Black community is almost looked at as a project, and that's kind of unfortunate, right? We already get the short end of the stick when we're brought into this world, and then we have to grow up in these communities because we weren't, or our parents, weren't given the opportunities that they might have deserved or needed, to be able to give their children and generations down the line the resources that they need. So when you have these different nonprofits coming into the hoods or coming into these areas, people are standoffish, and it hurts to even see, like, I live on the county city line, right? So I see good every day and I see bad every day. I see guys on the corner selling drugs. I see people, doing outreach and helping the people that are on drugs, right? So I get the best of both worlds, and it sucks that the people that come don't really, like, you can almost tell when you've grown up in the hood, you can tell when somebody is coming into the hood trying to help, and somebody who's coming into the hood just because they have to get a check for their job, right? And that's why I feel like reading people is almost a natural instinct for people in the Black community, because we can call bullshit, and we can call it real when it's real. So I feel like, I don't know.
I want to piggyback off of that, because like that's so true. And I'm like that because I am from the hood, so I can call bullshit easy. But I moved out of the hood and I moved to Defiance, Ohio when I was 19. This is a predominantly white area. My school was predominantly white, but I'm on guard because I'm from the hood. So now I'm reading everybody, you know what I'm saying? But it was something that I had to dismantle because I'm no longer in the hood. I'm in and so, and even still to this day, I'm learning that, you can't, even though I am a product of my environment, when I change my environment, I got to become a different product, because it's not gonna be the same everywhere you go. And I say that to say, because in the Black community, we're so used to not being able to trust people, and especially white people. We're so on guard. And even if there is somebody that's like, hey, I'm trying to understand you, I'm trying to see how I can be a friend and be an ally, you like, what? Nah, no.
Yeah. It's tough to believe that somebody outside of your family truly wants the best for you. It's hard to believe somebody that doesn't know what goes on behind your closed doors can relate to you. So for me, going back to just growing up, none of my friends had to grow up without their mother. In fact, almost all of my friends that I grew up with had both parents. And so while I was trying to get away from one of mine and didn't have access to the other, as you can imagine, there was a huge disconnect, right? And to this day, I don't allow disrespect to women just in general, but any of my homeboys that might try to crack slick at their mothers, hey, we're not doing that. Because for me, you have to have a certain level of truth to yourself, right? You have to have a certain level of communication, and yeah, I think that when people who can't truly relate to you or like, I have a real big thing on people getting paid, like therapists, right? For example, growing up, me and my dad did therapy right after my mom died, and I hated it. And to be honest, I still hate therapy, because why should I go to somebody who doesn't know me from a can of paint, tell them my story, and think that they're gonna give me real, genuine advice back, when all in all, they just trying to get a check at the end of the day, right? I'm just a client to them. Do you really care? So when I leave out of here, are you really thinking about Chris and what Chris just told you? And are you really worried about making Chris a better person? So for me, I just feel like with everybody, with the Black community, with the white community, with purple, blue, however, you have to have a certain level of trust. You have to have a certain level of communication, or there won't be any help for anybody.
Right. I mean, I just got to say too, because I think we might have lost Dnechelle. I hope she logs back in, but to keep it going, prior to stepping into this role with YPR, I worked as a peer recovery coach at a local community mental health center. And I worked with therapists, and I got to, form relationships with them. And I mean, I will say therapists and behavioral health specialists do not get paid enough money. They're not like psychiatrists, they're not doctors. Like, they're probably, they get probably similar pay to like teachers. And every single therapist I've ever come to know, they're in that line of work because they have some sort of connection to, whether themselves or their family members, like, have experienced like mental health challenges or substance use disorder. So
I would love to meet somebody that I really truly felt I can connect with, because again, and it's nothing against therapists. It's truly how I was just raised, what I was told. Don't tell nobody what goes on behind closed doors. Nobody needs to know what happens in our house. Shoot, when I got abused by my father, I had gotten a whooping because I got like a D in a class, right? So he whooped me so bad I had a belt buckle bruise on the side of my thigh. And I went to school the next day. I was like in 6th grade, 7th grade, and everybody could tell that something was wrong because I wasn't my outgoing self, right? So long story short, came home, CPS was at my house, and he told CPS, if he lies to me or does something again, I'm gonna whoop his ass. And if y'all want to see it, I'll do it in front of y'all. So for me, that initial experience for me, I was afraid to tell anybody what happened inside my house, in fear that because he built, not knowingly, but he built that fear in me, that I didn't even want to talk to him, like, so
Right.
I truly feel that we have a lot of setbacks and challenges that we've had to overcome, and again, some people choose to use substances to deal with them, and some people find other healthier ways. I hope I can
Right.
find a healthier way to deal with it, because depression is a silent killer and the biggest killer in the Black community, other than gun violence, especially in Baltimore. So, yeah.
On the topic of like accessing, therapy, what is that like when when you go to explore accessing therapy? Like, are you able to find therapists that look like you that you feel like you can relate to?
I think it's gotten a lot easier now because it's trendy. Mental health is trendy. So they have plenty of apps where you can go and, find therapy. But before, it wasn't like that. I was one of the first in my family to ever be like, yo, this crazy is gonna end with me. I need some therapy. And I had a white male, and he was so out of touch, so out of tune. Each and every time I went, he diagnosed me with something different. And I was just like, no, this
Right.
is not it. And I think so much so to where as an adult, I started to try and figure myself out and find other pathways of expressing healthy anger and things like that. So I dance, I work out, I heavy into mindfulness, meditation, yoga. I didn't find those things until adulthood. And my whole family still looks at me like, girl, you so weird. We don't do stuff like that. Like I'm the weird one in my family because I do yoga and because I do meditation and stuff like that, because I had to figure out how to break the generational curse of substance use disorder. And I'm doing great with that, I would say. And it took being a part of young people in recovery to be able to be like, yo, there's healthier options, you know what I'm saying? However, when I explain that to my family who's still in the hood, who hasn't left their mindset long enough to be like, hey, maybe therapy is for me. Maybe I can go and tell my doctor that I need some help mentally versus physically, even though I don't trust this doctor physically. So I'm probably not going to trust the doctor. Like it's so many different dynamics to that. Right. And it goes back to, again, like what Chris said, the trust thing. Mm-hmm. But I am a living, breathing testimony that you can find healthier outlets, but you have to put yourself in a situation too, because the government's not going to do it. And the Black families in the Black community, stay strong and pray about it is the closest thing to mental health services that we get in these households. Like it's tough, but it's easier if you look for it and if you position yourself to do so. Like, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got to open yourself up to like different possibilities. And I mean, it definitely sounds like even like creating them, they don't exist. So making sure that like there's effort being put forward to create these opportunities and resources and
I want to say as well, with the whole not trusting people, we also miss opportunities for treatment and for recovery because of that very reason. Even if we do get a Candace Rose to come and say, look, I got your back. I don't care about what you've been through. I'm going to help you through it because I've overcome, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, there's those missed opportunities for treatment because there's nobody there building rapport. There's no programs there to say, hey, I'm here to stay to push you through this. And then there's another part of this recovery. Then there's another part. And, it looks different over here than it does over here. My brother found out that he had been in and out of the juvenile detention centers and prison since he was 12 years old. And there was no remediation each and every time, nothing. And I'm like, okay, I don't sympathize with a grown-ass man for making grown-ass man decisions, but I understand that there was nobody there to help you recover from whatever it is that caused you to do, to spiral out of control in this way. And so I wish I knew of the programs that you speak of in the prison systems, Candace, because I'm like, yo, they need stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? But they don't care because the sooner they get out, the quicker they come back in because they have no idea how to not be institutionalized on the outside because they spent so much time on the inside.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about a 12-year-old boy, being incarcerated and continuing to be incarcerated throughout his adolescence, like, what programs were in there that were helping him, to integrate back into the community as an adult man. Like when we don't really focus our energy and resources into like healthcare, and instead we're like focusing it into incarceration, we're only perpetuating the issue even further. So like it's not a surprise, that the events in your brother's young life, kind of led him to these decisions. Because, what sort of influences do you have in your life when you grow up incarcerated? Like you learn from the community around you, and when the community around you is within like prison walls, you learn a different way to survive.
Absolutely.
I kept thinking Chris was going to say something, but I know we're starting to get kind of low on time, but I feel like this conversation needs to continue, so we'll probably have to like pick this back up before too long. But one question you kind of brought up, Dnechelle, was like, is the like, why do you believe, and we've kind of touched on it, but maybe just kind of like honing in on it, is like I think the underlying undertone too, that we haven't really like said out loud, is like there's definitely racism impacting the Black communities and people of color, like being able to access treatment and recovery services, but even like them being offered or presented, because rather than substance use disorder being treated, it's being criminalized within these communities. So, why do you think it's more or less likely to happen? Like, why do you think it's less likely for recovery to happen within, Black and communities of color?
We don't push recovery, we push prison. That's one of the main reasons. And Chris mentioned that it feels like the Black people are the project. And I want to go back to that, because if you think of the low income housing is what some people call them, and other people literally call them the projects, because they like to fill these small areas up with Black people so that they can continue to destroy each other as a part of the projects. But anyways, back to the question. I believe the prisons are pushed more than treatment, more than recovery, more than mental health services or anything like that. They may have GED programs or halfway houses, but those things are, of course, only temporary. And then it's back to the outside world, where again, on every corner, Candace, in the hood, there is a liquor store. A liquor store. Or on the other end, there's a church. And so where do you go if you're not a saint? And you don't want to be, in someone's church every Sunday, or you don't even meet the requirements to be the Christian that that you need to be to go to this church.
Right.
You got the liquor store, because there's always going to be the liquor store or somebody outside the liquor store with a more tempting option for you to suppress.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to also add that there's so much generational oppression in the Black community that is never discussed when we're talking about substance use disorders either.
Yeah. So there's such a strong stigma around drug use in the Black community, right? We're dependent on it, we need it, can't live without it, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. The unfortunate part about it is substances aren't going anywhere, and unfortunately, that's an unhealthy habit that we choose to run to when we don't have these healthy steps put in place. Like I said earlier, it starts young. It starts by somebody having the discipline, the love, the compassion enough to say, hey, this starts here. Just like Dnechelle said, this isn't going to continue to be a cycle, right?
Right.
Who is going to be that person for you? And we don't teach that. We don't tell each other that. And then when you have a Black person such as myself, who wants that cycle to change, not only for himself, but for others too, that creates that disconnect that I was talking about earlier, where trust comes in, because people are like, damn, you just another Black, you a cop out, you one of them. And it's not about being one of them or being one, it's about doing the right thing. It's about living a healthy life. It's about being a productive citizen in society, and not looked at as an animal that just does drugs or sells drugs and kills your community. So again, I feel like it all starts with ourselves. It all starts with just communicating and being able to be vulnerable enough. And then last but not least, I think one of the biggest challenges we face in the Black community is also accountability. I know for myself, I struggled with that, just growing up. I used to put the blame on everybody else. My problems are everybody else's. Play that victim role all the time, until I got to the point where I realized that the problems that I was facing came from the actions that I was making, whether they be indirect or direct. So I feel like, trust, communication, and accountability can truly change the way that, we look at just living that healthier life without substances.
Thank you for that. Just really, really well summarized there. So thanks for being so articulate with that. And I don't know, I might get in trouble with people. I've got friends that still drink, but like in my journey of recovery and alcohol being my substance of choice, now at a point where like I don't want to drink it, like I have this like theory that, alcohol really is in place to like oppress people like across the board. I mean, if you think about the challenges that it creates within like family dynamics and even people trying to like improve their lives. How many college students do you know that, you know, their grades struggle because they're prioritizing like their relationship with alcohol over their academics? And I've noticed when people stop drinking alcohol or using other substances, like you have this opportunity to like expand your mind and really like put forth um, all the energy that you have and really like reach your full potential. So like as long as we keep like promoting alcohol use and other substances, I mean alcohol is the primary one that is just, you know, glorified in our country and in other countries, but it's just going to continue to like limit people from reaching their full potential. And that's just what kept ringing for me, you know, as you kept mentioning, you know, how prevalent liquor stores are in, you know, these.
They're gonna still build them. They're gonna still put the alcohol in our communities. They still gonna put the substances in our communities. And
We just ask for more opportunities for recovery and treatment.
Exactly.
Right.
If we had the tools, I feel like if we had the proper tools to be better, you would see a lot more people wanting to be better. I'll tell you this: I went through in my life where I was smoking, and literally all I did was spend money on weed. I would barely feed myself, barely took care of myself, and I've been out of my father's house since I was 17, and so for 10 years now, and that led me to being homeless, which was my breaking point, because it was like, yo, you're relying so much on this substance that's not doing anything but making you broke and not getting you anywhere in life. You know, so I had to learn how to, you know, truly deal with everything I was dealing with and not put myself deeper into a hole, you know. So it's been a process within itself, just getting myself out of the hole I put myself into, you know, growing up. So.
Respect. Look at you taking accountability.
Oh, yeah. Well, guys, we're running low on time, so I just have one more question that I want you both to answer. But in recovery corner fashion, I want to know, you know, what does recovery mean to you? I know Chris is going to ask Dnechelle to go first.
Oh, I don't mind going at all. Recovery means healing. It means starting fresh, becoming anew, being full in yourself, being fully submerged in the life that brings you joy and sometimes pain, because recovery is not painless, and just taking it day by day. That's what recovery means to me. Healing and fullness.
Yeah, so I'm looking down, shaking my head, just listening to that, and really thinking how recovery means different things to different people, right? But essentially, that's all recovery is. It is the same thing. I feel like when you're in recovery, you want to be recovered from what you're going through, right? And so the process of that, I think, looks different for everybody, of course, the ways they take that, but essentially recovery is simply that. You know, you want to be recovered from what it is you struggle with. So for me, just learning different avenues to deal with my depression, healthier ways to deal with my depression is what I would consider recovery. And just truly being happy, truly finding what makes you happy, and not nothing tangible, right? Nothing that we can touch, just finding what it is within you that makes you a better person. When I say I'm a person in recovery, because there's such a stigma on drugs and that word itself, recovery, you're looked at as like a bad person. Oh my gosh, he's done drugs or he's done this. And that within itself is a problem, but that's another conversation for another day. But I feel like recovery is just simply that, finding different healthier ways to recover from what you're going
Mm. Well, thank you both. Those are phenomenal answers. That I know I kind of put you on the spot. I didn't give you much time to think about that. So,
definition of recovery, Candace?
So, I mean, there's a definition that, so SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, they have a definition of recovery that I love because I don't know if I'm going to quote this verbatim, but it's a process in which individuals improve their health and wellness to live self-directed lives. Mm-hmm. And I love that because, you know, with YPR, we don't define recovery, what it looks like for anybody. Is it moderation? Is it complete abstinence? Is it medication? You know, is it self-directed? Like, it doesn't matter. It's up to the individual to define, you know, what recovery looks like. So in line with SAMHSA's definition, you know, it's like if moderation or medication is helping you improve your health and wellness, you know, it doesn't matter like the road that you take to get there. Yeah. So, you know, I think there's like other, you know, if you look at like the dictionary, like the definition of recovery is like regaining something that was once lost. Yeah. And I don't know, that stirs up a lot of different emotions for me. Cause I'm like, when I think of my active addiction, you know, there's like a lot that I don't want back from that. But I also view my recovery as kind of this like rediscovery of my inner child. You know, I think addiction took a lot of my like childhood away. I started drinking when I was 10 or 11. You know, so if I think of recovery in the more like old fashioned traditional definition, you know, getting back something that I lost, like I think about like getting back that little girl that lost herself, you know, all those years ago, and getting to like explore who I truly am and who I have the potential to be before alcohol and drugs took that all away from me.
I like that, Candace.
That's deep. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I feel like even as someone who is an ally in recovery, I can relate to that last part of just getting to know your inner child on recovery. On the recovery.
Yeah.
It takes away that innocence from us, right? We go through things and have to make decisions that sometimes we're not privy to, that we don't necessarily want to make, but have to make because, you know, it's survival of the fittest out here.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Conversation with both of y'all because y'all both seem to be great people who were able to you know, just recover and get through what you guys have been through. So the conversation was definitely powerful and meaningful in more ways than one, for sure. So thank you for having me be a part of this platform. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you both. And I mean, I want to continue to have conversations like this. So like if you ever feel like there's something, you know, that we should talk about, like, let me know. So I just want to continue, you know, obviously.
Something deeper about mental health, just in general, mental health within itself, not necessarily maybe in the Black community, just mental health. So
yeah.
Even
no, totally.
Like Dnechelle said earlier, mental health is trendy, but we need to make that a constant thing. It doesn't need to be a trend anymore. So
yeah, it needs to be sustainable.
Right.
One thing I've often thought of too, I know I'm gonna get down a rabbit hole, so I don't want to get too far. But like, you know, it's common to have like annual physical health checkups. But like, why don't we do that with mental health? You know, like, why aren't we having these like checkups? You know, be like, are you okay? You know, and if everything's all good and gravy, like fantastic. But sometimes like those opportunities to address mental health, even if it's like annual, you know, because a lot can change in a year. You know, and then making sure that people have like direction towards the resources they need if there is some heavy shit going on that needs to be talked about. But, you know, that's a dream. I can dream, you know, whatever. It all has to start with an idea and then start talking about those ideas and then taking action, and eventually things happen. But
it'll happen soon.
yeah,
Hopefully it's in our lifetime.
seriously. Well,
But
yeah,
if not, we'll be the ones who provided the change for it.
right, exactly.
Real quick before we do get out of here, Dnechelle, I would love to connect with you, just learn from you. If possible, we can exchange contact information to Candace. If you can give her mine, I'd appreciate that.
Just send me an email. I'll come to your events, your our recovery meetings, or your pro social. Send me a calendar invite to that, and we'll connect out.
Well, and Slack too. I mean, I could,
connect us through there, Candace. Yeah, for sure, and I'll be sure to get that. All right. So this opportunity, I look forward to the next one. All right.
All right.
Yeah. Don't run just quite yet. Yeah. Thank you both so much for being on the show. It really, really was a pleasure and an honor to talk to you both. So thanks for sharing your stories, and just kind of like elevating this discussion. I want to thank everybody for listening to today's discussion. If anybody listening has any ideas on topics you'd like us to discuss on the show, you can email us at recoverycorner@youngpeopleinrecovery.org. Once again, I'm your host, Candace Rose. New episodes are available to stream every other Wednesday as early as 5 a.m. Eastern Time. So be sure to catch us next time. As always, here at YPR, we do recover and we are in your corner. Thanks for listening.